you realize you're falling, and you're like, oh my god, I'm falling, and then after a while you realize, oh, there's no bottom. I can just continuously fall forever, and then you're like, oh, and then you can relax into the fall.
That is deep. That's so true though. Like the times where, I felt the most at peace are the times where I've just completely let go and take my hands off the wheel and just let life just take me where I want to go.
Yes. Have I told you, like, the way that I phrased that? I said it a little differently. Okay. I say, let life fuck you.
That's the truth.
I'm like, get fucked by life, because it's amazing. Yeah. If you just let go into it.
You are listening to the Boundless Enigma podcast with Sam Zins
and Ryan Mulkentine. On this podcast, we dive into the mind, reality, and existence itself to provide you with boundless ideas and insights. We were just having a huge deep dive into relationships before we started recording, and I'm sad that we didn't record it because it was really good stuff. But we can continue on the topics because I think they're valuable insights that we're having.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could start at the point of, balancing a relationship with life, with other life things. Like, I was just talking about working out, like physically, eating right, going to school, going to work. You got parents, you got friends, you have all of these things that, we're in the midst of learning, and we're always going to be learning, but we're just at this early stage of them all, I feel, where it's like, it's an influx of information.
I like what you said earlier about how, like, when you were young, like, you look back on your younger self, and like, I totally agree with what you said about how, like, I'll look back right now and be like, oh gosh, I don't know. I'll kind of cringe at myself or think like, what was I doing? Or thinking I would never do that now. Like, there are so many times where I'm like, oh gosh, like, I can't believe I said that, like, out loud to somebody.
Yeah.
And right now I'm having some little things in my relationship that I would like to be going better. And I'm just having some struggles in them because I wonder if, like, 10 years from now, I'll look back and be like, oh, well, no wonder you were having an issue there because you said this stupid thing. And I right now, I just am not aware of how I'm communicating or something. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you brought up how I was talking about looking at my past self. And then I like how you just brought up talking about your future self and what you'll be thinking about your current self.
Yeah.
And I think that could maybe be a good way of taking a look into what's going on in our lives and realizing, like, okay, what would my future self think? Like, is this something that I could fix right now that I'm just procrastinating getting to because I'm scared to do it or something like that? Like, is this a hard conversation that I need to be having with somebody that I'm not having? Or is this just something I need to tell somebody just in general? Like, is maybe by asking yourself, what would my future self want me to do? Maybe that could be a good way of kind of tapping into that.
Yeah. Or, I've heard someone say before, is like, you need to craft the idea of your ideal self in your mind so that you can then ask your mind, what would my ideal self do in this situation?
Craft your ideal self. Okay.
It's like imagine yourself 5 years from now. If you do everything you want to do, you live by the values that you want to live by, and you become the person that you want to become. What does that person look like 5 years from now? And what would that person do if they were in your situation? And then you can, like, almost ask your future self, what would you do? And try to, like, see it from the ideal self's perspective so that you can live your present moment as best you can, in a way. Like, that's one strategy.
Yeah. And, hearing you say that makes me immediately think, like, that tells me that we know what we want to do. You know, we know
True.
what we know what we want. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
doing it and getting what we want. You know, like I said, having those hard
Yeah.
conversations and whatnot. You know, that it's the stuff that we know that we want and need. It's just a matter of actually doing it and getting out there and doing it.
Yeah. It's like, to me, I think that comes in the form of intuition. I like to call it intuition. It's like that inner knowing. Like, you know what you need to do, you know what you want inside. It's just kind of a natural inclination. But it's just, maybe that's not always the easiest, and maybe it's going to have consequences that
Mhm.
you might not want to deal with in the immediate moment, even though the
Yeah.
long term, it's like having difficult conversations with your girlfriend. It's like, yeah, she might cry if I tell her this thing, but what's the consequence of not bringing up this issue? It's just going to persist and persist and
Mhm.
persist.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the stuff that that like almost all of us recognize is going to happen. It's just a matter of catching it soon enough, you know, and actually just doing it,
True.
because I think we all know that like there's things in our lives that are bothering us at the moment or that we would like to change, but we're not changing it for the simple reason that we don't want to deal with it right now, you know. But we know what's going on. It's just kind of getting pushed to the back burner right now. And you know,
Right.
maybe that's for a good reason or maybe it's not, but I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah. It's like, does it have to do with like the amount of self discipline that you have?
Hmm.
Or like, is there room for like some relaxed going
Yeah.
about it?
To me
About,
it feels like self-honesty, because if you're honest with yourself, then you'll tell yourself like, hey, this is a situation that I think needs to be fixed. Now, do I want to do it now or do I want to do it later? Let's be honest about it, you know?
yeah. That's kind of, honestly, it's like, as, okay, I'm having a cool like kind of double thought here.
Okay.
So as you get closer to death, I've heard that it can feel like very intense and there's a lot of energy building up because you're starting to, as you're getting closer and closer to death, like someone who has cancer and they have a year left to live, they're getting closer to their deathbed, through their death date that they've been given by their doctor, and life feels way more intense now because you know that you have so much time left, and so your reality becomes much, you become so much more present because you know that you only have a few days or weeks left, and that can be very intense, and it forces you to be honest about how your reality is right now.
Mm.
And in the same way that I think that you can, that happens when you're facing death, I think you can have like mini deaths approach in your life. Like, for instance,
Mm.
right now I am coming to the death of my college years. I have a year left, and I'm starting to get very honest with myself about my situation,
Yeah.
about how I think this is why I've ignited a passion in myself to build a sustainable income for myself outside of like a wage, outside of like someone else paying me. Because I know I have to be honest with myself at this point, because I know that the end is coming, and and if I don't get something set up for myself, I will be kind of in a worse situation. So, and maybe there's like all these other kinds of things. Maybe like you're expecting a baby, so then the death of not having a child
Mm.
comes, and then you have to better yourself to be a parent. And so then you have to be honest with yourself there. So maybe there are all kinds of these like mini deaths that we approach in our lives that force us to be present and honest.
Yeah, I like the way you put that about mini deaths, because that really is what it feels like sometimes too. It feels like a mini death, you know, like you feel that like almost that anxiety build up in your chest in a situation when something's about to happen, and it's because you know that this is like the end of something of some sort, you know, and it could even be the end of the your mindless thoughts going in your head that you've been wanting to
Yeah.
approach, you know, and then you finally start to approach it and you get scared because it's like, that's a mini death coming, you know, and
Yeah.
you know it's coming.
Yeah. It's like I've heard that all fear is rooted in death. Now it doesn't just mean like your
Mhm.
physical death. It could
Yeah,
mean like the death of the end of thinking or something. Or like it could be the death of your self-image as whatever you want to view yourself as. It's like your fear about like how people view you. Like, oh, like am I still liked? Am I still getting their approval? It's like you're fearing the death of their approval,
yeah, yeah. No,
right?
yeah, and that's so interesting that our lives literally are based on the fear of death. And
Yeah.
maybe that means that if the closer that we can get to death, the happier we could be, you know. And that sounds so
Wow.
counterintuitive. It sounds counterintuitive, at least, but I don't.
Wow. No,
But it's the
that
truth.
makes it does sound counterintuitive, but in this context right now, it makes complete sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow. And there are studies done that as people get older, they tend to get happier. And as they get closer to death, they get happier. It's because
hmm
I think it's because of what we were just talking about. People become more honest with themselves and they become more present as they get closer to their death.
yeah. Do you think that also it could do? I mean, obviously, there's a lot of factors, but do you think it could also deal with the fact that older people tend to not care nearly as much about what people think of them? You know?
Yeah, I think it just naturally, you might, as you get older, probably it's just easier. Like you start to learn about yourself, about what makes you happy and unhappy. So then maybe it doesn't have to do with death, but
I mean,
it
I'm
just
sure
could
that could
just,
be. I'm sure that's part of it because I'm sure that every elderly person has had the thought of like I'm at the point where it's like my immune system isn't nearly as strong as it used to be. Especially during
yeah,
COVID. Like anything could happen at any moment. So you kind of almost have to internally prepare yourself for death before it actually gets to you because you kind of want to be you don't want it to catch you off guard and you don't want to have to all of a sudden turn those unturned stones over. You kind of want to start doing that already because
yeah,
like why would you wait at that point?
yeah. Although I know a lot of people get depressed the closer they get to death. You
That's true.
know,
That's another perspective for sure.
that's tricky. But honestly, the people. So I have a grandma who's, I don't think she's 81 or 82 now, and she's starting to get kind of frail, and um, her heart isn't as good. And the more that she gets sick, and the older she gets, the honestly kind of more depressed she's becoming, which is really sad because she's a
Yeah.
really sweet lady. Um, but I honestly noticed that like she's the type of person that's resisting death.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just know who she is,
hmm
and I know that she is afraid of it. I mean, obviously, who wouldn't? Obviously, like you can't
Right.
blame anyone for being afraid of death. Like, of course,
Yeah.
but I think the people that kind of welcome death and like are kind of like friendly towards its approach are going to be a lot happier than people who are just like scraping at the wall, clinging to life.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I like the word resisting that you use because that's a good way to think about it. It's like why resist it? Because by resisting it, you're ignoring the truth, and the fact is that like we all die
Yeah.
at some point.
And as you get closer to death, you're forced to get more honest with yourself because you encounter more truth. And so some people they might resist
Yeah,
harder and harder, and that might make
yeah,
you more depressed. But for people that welcome the truth more and more, they get more
Mm.
truth and they'll be happier.
Yeah, man. That's very true. That's I pride myself on finding truth, regardless of whether it's the truth that I want it to be or not. I mean, but I, I never thought about how like long lasting and how deep it can really be to either choose to look for the truth or to resist the truth. And I think by what you're saying here about how like some elderly people maybe resist death. You know, this is a product of someone who maybe was resisting truth throughout their whole life. Maybe or maybe not.
Oh yes. No, I think you're absolutely right. At least in my experience of her, uh, like I said, seriously, I love my grandma.
Yeah.
And hopefully she's not listening to this, but I don't think she knows that this exists. But I do, but I think that she does resist a lot of truth
Hmm.
just from the things that I know about her. Um, like, I don't want to get too personal because I don't know
Yeah.
if anyone in my family would ever listen to this. But
Yeah, that's all right.
I just know of like specific instances where she does resist specific truths that have come up in the family.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, speaking generally, um, yeah, resisting that truth is just going to put you in a position where you're going to start to hurt eventually. And whether you show it or not, I think that it does hurt people who don't accept the truth. You know, I think there's like this internal battle with those who resist it. And like I said, it might not always show, but I kind of recognize it with just people that I've met throughout my life. That the people who resist the truth, you can tell that you can just tell that there something is not, you know, clicking. I guess you could say. Not to say like, not to say, and
Yeah,
I don't mean to make it sound like anybody who doesn't accept the truth can't be a good person or
right.
smart or happy by any means or anything like that. But I think
Hmm.
there's always going to be a piece missing if you can't accept the truth.
Yeah, it's like when you're faced with the truth, it gets presented in front of you. You have two options, you know, and one of the options is to accept that truth, and one of them is to pretend otherwise.
Hmm.
And to accept it might be emotionally more difficult than resisting it, because resisting it or not accepting it might be easier because you can just kind of ignore it or kind of be like push it away maybe,
Hmm.
and then just continue living your life. And so maybe it feels like it's more of a passive, like lazier way to deal with the truth than to actually face it. But sooner or later it's gonna the truth is gonna force itself on you if you don't
Yeah.
accept it, because everybody dies. Everyone's gonna decay into the dirt, whether you like it or not. So if you don't take the truth now, you can avoid it for a bit, but then it's gonna shove it down your throat.
Yeah, hey, death is the only truth that everybody will experience. So,
Yeah,
you know, you might
true.
as well come to terms with it now. You know, I mean,
Yeah.
I think I'm at a point right now where it's like, you know, obviously I don't want to die, but you know, like things happen and you never know what's going to happen. So, I like to just be at a position where it's like, you know, if something were to happen, I'm ready for it. You know, because that's just the
You
reality.
know,
You know.
I thought that I was the same way until a few days ago. I was exhausted after this one workout I did, and I was like, "Am I like internally bleeding? Because I am really fucking exhausted right now." And I feel like no, like I was like way too exhausted. I was concerned for my health, and I was like,
Oh yeah.
"What if I died?" And then I had like a little bit of like anxiety. I was like, "Oh shit!" Like I thought I was ready to die, but now I don't want to die.
That's hilarious.
I
But no
I mean, I
internal
was
bleeding, you're
obviously
good
fine.
now.
Oh my gosh. Well, I obviously just was a hypochondriac. I thought
Right.
I was just being silly, but it like that was I faced truth there. I faced the truth that I might not be ready to face the pain of dying. That I'd need more practice in life to. Do you know what I mean? Like I need to
Yeah.
die before I die. Still.
Yeah. Yeah. No, okay. I get what you're saying. You know, I feel like I definitely could use practice myself. Because when I say that, I more so mean like if something were to happen, like I'm ready to break everything down to what I have to break it down to. You know, like I'm gonna be
Yeah.
honest with everybody who I need to be honest with, and all these other things. So I guess in that regard is what I'm saying. I'm not ready for death. You know, I don't want to be in that position, obviously, but
Yeah.
you know, it's
Have
just
you
the
had
reality.
any loved ones die in the last few years?
Yeah, my grandpa died like 3 years ago or something like that.
Were
Um,
you close?
yeah, not like super close though. Like I
Yeah.
don't know. I feel like my family is a weird situation for me. Because like we have
I
family get-togethers
think a
and
lot of
everything.
people can relate to
Yeah,
that.
I mean, I'm sure.
Probably.
You know, because like I feel like up until like recently, like as in like the past like year or so, like I didn't know how to handle my family. You know, like I didn't quite understand it. Um,
Yeah.
because it's just a lot to take in. There's a lot of people. Family parties can feel hectic. All these other things. As somebody who, you know, I've considered myself shy for most of my life until I realized like I don't need to consider myself shy. So that's what's helped me recently is like, okay, like I don't need to be shy anymore. Like I can talk to these people. They're just humans. So,
Yeah.
um, but you know, no, back to your question though. Nobody, no, nobody other than my grandpa.
See, I think that's gonna be a major truth that's gonna like hit me soon.
Mm,
It's like what I mean, honestly, the odds that my mom or my dad is diagnosed with like cancer in the next year is like not insignificant. Like it's probably like 5% or
right.
something.
Yeah.
It's like that is a reality that could very well happen. And would I be ready for that? I definitely wouldn't be ready for it, but it would be a great encounter with truth, you
Yeah,
know?
absolutely. Yeah, I've thought about that myself. Not in that exact light, but in the light of, yeah, my parents could die at any moment. And like, and I think then you start to kind of appreciate everything that they've done for you because
Yeah,
it's like,
true.
wow, like, you know, like, because obviously I think we all say that we appreciate, well, not all of us, but, but a good majority of us say that we appreciate what our parents have done for us. But I don't think we quite realize how much they've done for us, you know? Um,
Yeah.
because it's a lot, you know. And like I said the other day, I was thinking about it, and I was like, oh wow, like I'd be really lost if I lost one of them, you know.
Yeah, you're right. Damn. I mean, think about like even just for the first like 2 or 3 years of your life, like you couldn't do anything.
Yeah, yeah,
You know,
true.
you had to be changed, clothed, fed, bathed, watched for years. And
Yeah,
that alone is like, if you didn't have that, like you'd be dead.
yeah,
And to
yeah,
think like every day, 24 hours of the day for 1,000 days, you were helpless and you relied on them,
yeah.
you
And
know?
they didn't have to take care of you either, you know. Obviously, like most people who choose to have a baby will obviously make
Sure.
that choice, but they could have just left you abandoned. They could have done anything, quite literally,
True.
you know.
Yeah. I
You
mean,
know,
thank God for like genetic instinct that makes most people not do that, but but like you're right, that could happen and it does happen on occasion, you know?
right? Yeah, or you know, or we could have been thrown up for adoption, you know, and
Mhm.
that's a
That's a
hard thing
rough
to
life.
do. Yeah, so you know, that's the like what we just talked about right there is a ton to be appreciative of. Never
Yeah.
mind all the other countless things that they've done throughout our entire lives and up to this point still.
Dang. Wow. We are getting like heavy into this
Yeah,
topic. My goodness. This is like honestly, talk about like encountering truth. I feel like I'm encountering so much right now. Just like this talk in general has been
yeah,
like deep and dark, but you know, like I mean, that deep and darkness isn't always a bad thing. I think it's a good thing a lot of times. I love the deep and the dark because like it is the truth. But oof, my goodness, it can be heavy, you know?
yeah. No, it definitely can be. You know, and I'm the type of person that wants to just fall into these things. You know, like Like the
Yeah.
other day, like I told you how I was thinking about my parents' death. Like I was falling into that. Like I was just
Yeah.
like I just like let my arms out and I just face planted it. I was like, wow, this is crazy, man. And
Ah, yeah.
it's so like profound, and the fact that like I feel like I didn't even go as deep as I could have gone, which is just
Yeah.
kind of crazy, but it's just it's mind blowing. It really is.
Dude, I think you would love psychedelics
I think I would too.
because because like talking about like letting go and surrendering and just falling into the experience of whatever that experience is it's like this taking a psychedelic almost forces you to surrender and fall into the experience. And once you do, a lot of people can resist it and then they feel bad and have a bad trip. But if you can surrender and just trust fall into the experience of the
Yeah,
trip, it's amazing. It is
yeah,
just beautiful, full of truth, full of intense, deep truth
yeah,
and beauty. And it's like it puts you face to face with reality.
yeah. And something to say about all that is I would love to take shrooms. Not right this second, in the near
Yeah,
future here, but
right.
sometime somewhere down the line here. But the reason I don't want to take it in the near future is because I feel like I'm at a point right now where I need to ground myself a little more before I do something like that, because I feel like I'm at a point where if I took shrooms or another psychedelic, that I would definitely be able to go deep, and I feel like I'm not ready to go that deep right now.
Yeah,
And I think that's a truth that I've been coming to recently myself, is that
yeah,
like there's just some truths like I'm just not ready to go that deep at the moment. I want to go that deep,
yeah. That makes
but
sense.
there's some grounding that's needed before I
Hmm.
make a decision like that.
Yeah. And maybe even if you find that eventually you are grounded enough to do it, you might take shrooms and then realize there was no ground to begin with.
That is true. That is true.
And then but you also realize it's like I've heard this description that like you realize you're falling and you're like, "Oh my god, I'm falling." And then after a while you realize, "Oh, there's no bottom. I can just continuously fall forever." And then you're like, "Oh." And then you can relax into the fall.
That's damn. That is deep. That's that's so true though. Like
You know?
the times where I felt the most at peace are the times where I've just completely let go and take my hands off the
Yeah.
wheel and just let life just take me where I want to go. You
Yes.
know?
Have I told you like the way that I phrase that? I said it a little differently. I
Okay.
say, "Let life fuck you."
That's the
Like
truth. That's the truth.
I'm like get fucked by life because it's amazing.
Yeah.
If you just let go into it,
That's hilarious.
you know.
No, that's so true. And this is clicking with me on in a different aspect of life, in which journaling. I feel like journaling is a place where I let my life fuck me. like I just write down what I write down, and I just keep going. I just keep going. I just keep going, and I don't care where I'm going. Like I'm just
Yeah.
going. You know.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that can be replicated in without a journal,
Yeah.
and that's what I do at times. But you know, I think more often I need to do that.
Yeah.
But that's so hard to get to that point.
Yeah. I like what you said about the grounding though, because you can't always be in that experience. You
That's
know,
true.
it's such a valuable experience, but I know what you're saying about grounding, and I honestly agree. I feel like I need to get right now. My focus. Okay, I love the spiritual realm of like this stuff that we're talking about, trying to get more in touch with reality and understanding the universe and feeling more at peace and connecting with love and truth. But I feel like that's something that I'm going to postpone for like a few years. Like I might obviously still continue meditating or whatever, doing my spiritual
Right.
practices, but going deep into it, I think is reserved for years in my future, because I know that in order to do that, I need to be financially free. I
Hmm.
need to kind of have a base. I need to like set myself up. Um, and so I need to like spend these years kind of in a less conscious space to build up a foundation, so that then I can have a platform to then raise up my consciousness later to encounter more truth and love later on.
Yeah,
You know what I
no,
mean?
that makes perfect sense to me. Um, I can't help but think of this something that Leo Gura said though, that I'm trying to remember exactly how he said it, but I'm feeling this the same way as you about like needing a basis, just a base just to sit on, because like that's what I feel like I'm missing at the moment. Not completely missing, but I feel like that's what I'm building, is what I should say. Um, but something that I just can't stop thinking about is Leo Gura saying that if we if we wait until point A in order to move on to point B, then like we're going to be doing that our whole lives. We're going to keep saying if this
Yeah.
then that, then this then that, and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard because it's like it makes sense to build a basis, but it also
Right.
makes sense to not hang your coat on one of those bases to get there.
Maybe it's like good to have a balance then,
Yeah, that's probably a good
so
way to think
so
about
you
it.
can at least experiment with like branching out onto new things that might feel scary, but
Mhm.
also it's like continue building what you know to be good and true now. Because like I don't know, I don't know how viable it is to always be like, I know what you're saying,
Mhm.
and I think there's truth there. It's a good truth, but I don't think it's the absolute truth. I think you need a mix.
Mhm. No, I think that's a reasonable answer. I think that's reasonable because I mean, in my own life, that's what feels reasonable. Is yeah, I'm gonna be spiritual, but I'm also going to be living my life and progressing through this physical life. Because it's such a hard balance, but I think if you can obtain that, then I think you can progress even further in both of those areas because you're being balanced.
Yeah. Okay, I just came up with an amazing title for this podcast episode, and it's called "Letting Life Fuck You: Encountering Absolute Truth."
I like that. Damn, that was good.
Oh yeah.
Like I just all of a sudden pull out an amazing title like
I feel like it's gonna be pretty good. I mean,
okay.
honestly, I feel like this episode has been just like raw
Okay.
dogging it. We're just
Yeah.
diving into the truth, and I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I like that too. And I think that's something that I want to carry over into the rest of my life more often. Is that like raw dog mentality? Not
Yeah.
literally, but
Okay. Okay.
you never know. But no, but like that mentality, that mentality of like fuck it, man. Like you gotta just say fuck it. Like I want to I
Yeah.
want to go back to earlier what we were saying about having those hard conversations. Where I was saying with my girlfriend, I feel like I could be having harder conversations and more honest conversations. And if I had that like raw dogger mentality, then I could have these conversations and not be afraid of them because you know what? It's not scary. It's just some truth,
It's
and
just,
sometimes the
it
truth feels,
has power to it. It's like
yeah,
it has this like intensity. Like real truth has an intense energy to it, and like that might be scary because it's intense.
it's a lot. Yeah.
But is it necessarily bad? No.
Mm-mm. No,
You know?
I feel like it's scary because you don't know what's going to happen. It's not actually scary. I mean, I guess in
Yeah.
theory that's what all scary things are. It's just you're scary because you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what
Yeah.
you don't know who this person is. You don't know what's going on. any situation could be scary because of you don't know what's going to happen. And I think similarly in my situation of having hard conversations is it's scary because I don't know what's going to happen, and
Yeah.
that's it. That's it. And that's the truth. So, I think that
Yeah.
mentality throughout life can be valuable.
Right. There's that fear, and that fear, it's always rooted in the future of like
Yeah,
it's all and for it to be in the future, it has to be in your thinking mind, because if
exactly.
you're not in your thinking mind, you're present.
Yeah,
So that's interesting to think about, that like
that is.
fear is like tied to your thinking mind, kind of, although I don't know, because what about like if you, well, maybe it honestly, I think that is true. Even if it's like something like happening right now that you're scared of, it's
Hmm.
still scared of something like a few seconds in the future or something.
Yeah, yeah. I something that instantly comes to mind is a very simple example of watching a scary movie and you hear that music going and that there's about to be some kind of jump scare or something like that, you know,
Yeah.
and you know it's about to come. You don't know what it's going to be, but you know it's about to come. And
Hmm.
that's what you were just saying about like it could even be a couple of seconds into the future, but your mind knows it's there.
Right.
Your mind knows something's going to be happening, but you're scared of it because you don't know what it's going to be,
Yeah.
or when exactly it's going to come. So,
Yeah.
and I think that translates
Those
over to life too, with
yeah, those
having those.
movies like really play on the deepest human fear of just the unknown.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, why else are we
Yeah.
scared of a freaking like zombie looking human, like in a
Yeah.
scary movie? It's like, oh shit, what the hell is that? I've not
Yeah.
seen something like that. you know?
Primal, it like
Yeah, primal,
taps
yeah.
into your primal of like something potentially dangerous that's not a human,
Yeah.
It's like not another human. I mean, other scary humans are bad too, but like something that you can't reason with. You can reason
Yeah.
with a human, but like a tiger, what are you going to do? You can't talk to a tiger. It's going to
Yeah.
come kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can't help but think of this when you were just talking about all that, about that like primal mentality. I used to go to the museum when I was younger, like pretty often with my mom, and they had. You have you been? I'm assuming you have.
Which museum?
The what's it called? The Union Terminal.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so do you recall that like the Indian exhibit that they had?
Maybe. Oh, I do. Maybe. I
Well,
mean, I don't know much about it.
okay, that's fine. Well, so it was like this dark, like long, like big hallway, and then they had like exhibits of like Indians on either side, and like they were doing different things. Like one, they were in their teepee, or and like the other one, they were like around a campfire, and then there was one where this Indian was like there were like four Indians like trying to kill a buffalo or something like that. And I just remember being when I was younger that I was always so terrified of that part. Like I was it was a little eerie. The whole exhibit was eerie to me because it's like you said, like so primal and like
Yeah.
it feels so
Intense.
distant. Yeah, intense. Yeah. But like that part like always just freaked me the fuck out. And I think that goes
Yeah.
back to that primal that you just
Hmm.
don't know what it is. Like you do, but you
Yeah.
don't, and it's just scary to you.
Right. Yeah, and I guess I mean, what's the value? I mean, if you can encounter that more often, can you then get better at
I think so.
like handling the unknown?
I think so.
Maybe that's the value of like mental training with psychedelics or like for personal development, because you're constantly, you know, having to face the unknown with a psychedelic. You don't know what that experience is going to hold for you or what deep dark truth is going to unmask in your mind.
True.
And then you have to deal with the truth. And then the more you do that, the more intense truths you encounter, the more equipped you are to handle lesser truths that you find in your regular day.
That is very true. I think you brought up a good point that we can train ourselves to be more attuned and adapt
Yeah.
to the
Like
to truths, basically.
desensitization training almost in a
Yeah,
way. I mean,
yeah,
I don't know, maybe that's the wrong way to say it.
yeah. I feel like desensitizing maybe isn't the right way, but in reality, it kind of is desensitizing. But
It's
maybe for
like
thinking purposes, maybe it's not a good way of thinking about it.
maybe so we're afraid of the unknown, but maybe if you get familiar with the feeling of the unknown, it can start to
Mm.
feel the unknown can start to feel familiar
That's a great way of putting it. That's a great way of putting
or
it.
something.
And then you can have those hard conversations more often, and they don't become hard conversations, they become conversations.
Yeah.
And you're familiar with conversations. So, yeah, that's
Yeah.
the way of putting it.
Interesting.
And you know, we're just there, we're just like grazing the surface, I feel like, because this translates
Yeah.
over to so many aspects of life. And I just keep talking about the conversations because that's just something relevant to what I'm experiencing. But there's so many things. It could just keep going. And that's the beauty of life.
I wonder if like enlightenment is like the ultimate encounter of like that like I feel like as we keep talking about these different things, there's a common experience of like fear and then knowing there's an intense unknown and then experiencing whatever that unknown is in the present moment. And it's very intense, it's very truthful, and then it's not so bad. And then you just experience that truth. I wonder if enlightenment is like the ultimate one of those.
Yeah, that definitely
Where like,
aligns.
I don't know,
Yeah. No, no, that
maybe.
definitely aligns, you know, because like, you know, in theory, or I guess speculation in our case, that
Yeah.
that sounds right. You know, like why wouldn't it be that? I mean, it's the ultimate truth. That's what you're looking for,
Yeah.
you know?
Right. I think that's like my if I could have one singular goal for like my life by the time I die, it's like to achieve enlightenment.
Yeah,
Which
that's
maybe
just
I don't know if that's possible, but
hey man, anything's
mm,
possible. So why not? You know,
yeah,
why not? You know, like you're talking about on last week's podcast about that guy who achieved enlightenment in jail. You know, I mean, who
yeah.
would have thought, you know, that that is something that has happened?
Oh, and he's so interesting because if I listened to him before, and he says that enlightenment is just the first step in the process.
Hmm.
It's like enlightenment isn't the end goal. It's like it's the first step in a greater process of I don't know, whatever spiritual whatever like truth is out in the universe that you can experience and know and tap into. He says that enlightenment is just the first step
Wow.
and
That's
that like
incredible.
you can then connect even further than that.
Yeah. That's just incredible. That's
I mean, who knows, but that's pretty crazy if he is right.
yeah, man. That's like I think that that shows us that there is so much out there and
Yeah.
that there's so much to learn and that we don't ever
Yeah.
stop learning.
It's like we put it's like that just means that like we're scratching the surface so minimally. Like we are taking like a few atoms off the top of an infinitely large block.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
It's
know?
like, dude, it just keeps going, and
Yeah.
you're like we're always trying to catch it almost, but it's like, how do you catch something that never ends? You know, you don't.
Right.
Or does it? You know, who knows? That's
I don't know. Gosh, all I can really say is I have no idea.
Yeah, the same. Same. You can only imagine, really. That's. I mean, you can't even
Yeah.
imagine.
You
I
can't
mean,
even
you
imagine.
can try to imagine, but you can't.
Yeah.
That's
It's
just
hard
the.
to like talk about
Yeah, it
something
is.
that you can't even imagine.
Yeah, I feel like I like sometimes when I'll talk to other people who don't quite follow like not even in just enlightenment, but like truth in general. Like
Uh-huh.
it'll sound to them like I'm like beating around a bush or something like that. But it's like
Yeah.
I'm not beating around a bush. It's just something that
Yeah.
you can't explain, and like
Yeah.
you just understand it. Like there's things that I understand that like I try to explain, and it's just like this is just something I understand. I just don't know how to.
Right.
I can't. I'm trying to like. I think something that Leo says that just kind of clicked with me is saying that is like you can point at it. You can point at it, but like he can't make you touch it. Like he can point right to
Yeah.
it, but he can't make
Right.
you touch it.
Yeah. It's like people, I think, who don't particularly like this side of reality or like this kind of philosophy
Hmm.
um don't like how like abstract it can be
Yeah, yeah,
because it
that's
can
good.
be so intangible. But
Yeah,
like the
oh, I
truth is,
do.
it's like I don't know. It's just it's the only way to really talk about it and give it justice is to talk about it
Mhm.
abstractly
Yeah.
because it's so infinitely undescribable that you
Hmm.
can only talk about it in like metaphors and I don't,
Yeah, you can only like dumb it down, and I don't mean dumb like I'm not calling anybody else dumb, but like in simple terms, like you can only dumb it down so far. You
yeah,
can't, like you said, you got to give it justice, and
right,
you can't be pulling pieces of the puzzle
right,
away. You got to have the whole
yeah.
puzzle. And
And
it's hard.
you can't say like, oh, this is it right here. Like this, I'm going to give you the definition and describe it completely. It's
Yeah,
like, it's impossible to do that
yeah,
for something like enlightenment or like the nature of all of existence. It's like, you can't just, it's impossible
hmm,
to put it into a sentence about like, this is the concrete example of it.
yeah,
There's no
yeah.
concrete example of this
You
stuff.
just can't do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like to think in like simpler terms of like somebody who is having this issue in their life, and you see the issue and you know exactly what's wrong, but they just for some reason aren't picking up on it, and then you try to go explain it to them, and you're like, hey, this is happening, this is what's wrong, and it's like, but they're like, no, that's not it, that's not it. It's like, this is me pointing to it right now, this is me pointing
Yeah.
to it, and but you can't force them to touch it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like to you, you're like, I know what I'm pointing to, but to you, it looks like I'm pointing at something that's not really the thing that it is.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. And if they took the time to actually process what I'm pointing to, then they'd probably realize like, okay, this
Right.
is an issue, But
But
it's hard.
you and me are very high on openness,
Yeah.
like the big five characteristics. Like we're both able to think very abstractly and we have a very open mind. We have very
Mhm.
radically open minds to be able to let in insights that are potentially strange and different.
Yeah.
But a lot of people don't have that ability, or they just
Mhm.
don't, they're not high on openness. And so they aren't able to experience that same level of truth.
Yeah, and from my experiences, I feel like I recognize that most of the time when somebody's not high on openness and thinks, that like what we're talking about is weird or like insignificant or whatever, I, in my experience, I feel that stems from anxiety or like awkwardness, like just people who just
Yeah.
don't want to like deal with it, because it seems weird or different or
Yeah.
strange.
What's interesting?
Hmm.
There is a study on psychedelics that says that people are noticeably higher on the trait openness after a psychedelic experience for a continuous period of a year.
Wow.
Like it changes your level of openness for a long time.
That's wild.
because it forces you to encounter truth.
Yeah, that's interesting. And like once you're, I feel like once you're forced to encounter it, it's like then you kind of realize it's there, and it's like, how are you going to ignore
Yeah.
something that you know is there? You know, I mean,
Or something that some sorry,
no, go ahead, go ahead.
something that you experience that you never thought was possible, that you're like, that just, I never knew that truth ever could possibly exist. That makes you think like, oh shit, how many other things are like that? You
Right,
know?
exactly, exactly, and it's just a matter of it taking like it's just a matter of you pulling back that curtain just a little bit to kind of get a taste of it, and then you're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, that's there. Now
Mm-hmm.
I gotta open it, you know. And
Yes.
that's the fun stuff, man. That's what I love so much about these conversations and just living life like this is just the amount of curtains that you can open up is endless,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's so fun. It's so fun to open them, you know. And
True.
I
I
wouldn't trade
agree.
it for anything.
I recently posted an article on my website called "What Stage of Spiritual Awakening Are You In?" It's a quiz that
Oh,
you can take, and I like define these like 6 stages. And stage 3 is called glimpsing awakening, and it basically is like defined by having your first profound spiritual experience, and then like once you glimpse it, you're like, oh my gosh, now I get why people are so obsessed,
yeah,
and suddenly something's is ignited inside of you that you're like, whoa, I need to know more about whatever that was, you know.
yeah, yeah. And then it's like, holy shit, like, and then it just keeps going, and then it just keeps going, and
Yeah.
it just never ends, you know. And that's
Yeah.
what's so fun about it, man. It's like this. It feels like this game that just doesn't end, and it constantly is going, basically.
Dude, the universe is amazing that it lets itself experience itself infinitely amounts of times in infinite different ways, and there's always more amazing beauty to find and cool truth. It's like it just gifts you with mind blowers. It's awesome.
It
Yeah.
does. It's so fun, and I wish I so wish that everybody would be down to do this. You know, like
Yeah.
I think obviously like it takes a world of people to, you know, function and whatnot. I understand
Yeah.
all that, but I wish that everybody would do it because I think that a lot of people could live happier lives if they were able to
Yes.
find it.
Yeah.
And that's what's missing.
I think so too. And I think the people that kind of dismiss it just haven't had that glimpse yet,
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
But if
Exactly.
it's, and I think this is where it's like, it's hard. How do you get people to glimpse it? That's so hard.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like just talking to people. And this is where I think psychedelics could be huge in
Yeah.
helping people. Yes. It's
You
like
know,
if we can decriminalize it and create retreat centers where people can experience this, we could we could create a higher consciousness society.
yeah, oh, that'd be awesome. And I think we're on the path to that. It's just
Yeah.
I think we're in a more beginning stage of that.
Oh yeah.
You know,
that's
like
that's like, I know that that's not possible right now, but it's just like it would be a cool thought to like
yeah,
someday maybe we could.
yeah. You know, and you were saying like you wish that you could just like tell people like how, you know, like show people it, you know, like or something like that. I forget exactly what you just said,
Yeah.
but
Right.
but you know, when I was just talking about how like I'm pointing to this, like this is what it is, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to realize like in conversations that there's always a back door, you know, and I feel like that's what I can be good at finding for people at times, not all the time, but sometimes is like if they're struggling with something like kind of like going in the back door and telling them like, hey, it's over
Yeah.
here. It's just out here. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's like a new pointing finger. It's not this way, but
Mm-hmm.
like I just got to go around and like point it back. You know, um,
Yeah.
and I'm wondering if that's possible with like spirituality and like and pointing to people to it.
I think the problem though is like the back door is different for everyone,
It is.
you
It
know?
is. Yeah.
And so you need to get good at like it's very nuanced and kind of subjective to the person. So a really good spiritual teacher is going to be someone that is very adaptable to the person, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I man, I really want to do something like that. Like, cause I love adapting to people.
Dude, you
And
would be amazing at that.
thank you. I, I
Yeah.
I feel like I do it so often, honestly. Like, not exactly in like the spiritual realm. Like, I'm not going out here to strangers saying like, "Hey, man,
Yeah.
let me make you spiritual real quick." Like, no, nothing like that. But
Yeah.
I just feel like in general, like, I have a good way of recognizing how somebody's thinking and like how to get them to see something that I'd like them to see. Um, and
Yeah.
I, I'd love to go into some kind of profession like that because I mean, that's why I would
Hmm.
love to be a therapist. Like, if I could pick something right now, I'd be a
Yeah.
therapist because it's like
Hmm.
that's your job is to help people see things that they need to see in themselves and whatnot. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Dude,
it's
I
just
think
so
you'd be a
fun.
great therapist.
Yeah, thank you. That's we'll see.
Yeah. And
We'll
you
see
know
where.
what? You know what? If you're listening to this podcast right now, help us blow this podcast up so that
Yeah,
it can just go crazy and we can get so many listeners that Sam and I can become professional spiritual mentors for people.
dude. Yeah,
And then
that'd be
our
awesome.
lives would, I mean, I don't know if I'd want to, but you know,
Yeah, yeah.
who knows?
Yeah, and I think something that would also be really awesome. This is, hypothetical if this podcast were to like blow up and, people started commenting and
Oh,
stuff. That'd be crazy. I would
yeah. Oh,
love
yeah.
to have like a portion of the podcast where we answer questions of some sort.
Oh, live
I would love
podcast.
that too. Oh my God. I would love that. That would,
Yeah.
that's like a dream come true right there. It's just being able to
Yeah.
just answer questions live. Oh,
Hmm.
that'd be awesome.
Dude. Yeah. If we get a big enough audience one day, I think that would be so awesome. I would love to do that.
Dude, yeah, that'd be amazing. If anybody's
Yeah.
listening this far, definitely drop a question of any sort. There's no bad questions
Seriously,
on here.
do.
There's not. There is
No,
not
we
such a thing as a bad question.
actually, did you see we had a cool comment on one of our last videos?
No, what the heck? I didn't
Somebody
see that.
commented.
I saw one
Here,
like a
I'm
few
gonna
videos ago about some girl like commenting saying like this handle sells Molly, weed, LSD. Did you see that one?
Yeah, I saw that one.
I was like, oh, come on now. I was excited at first because I thought I was reading the comment initially and I was like, oh, that's a nice comment. And then I was like, hold on, wait, they're just plugging themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Jing Zen commented, "Wow, popped up in my recommended. I was blown away that this only had 2 views and had to click. You guys are doing great."
Dude, that's awesome. Thanks. You said
I
Jing
know. That's
Zen?
so nice. Jing Zen. Thank you, Jing Zen.
Yeah, seriously,
If you're
thanks,
listening to
Jing Zen.
this.
That's a really nice comment. We appreciate that.
Yeah, leave us a question. We'll
Yeah,
talk about
leave
it.
us a question if you're listening. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Man, all right.
all
Well,
right.
on that note, um, you got any last words that you'd like to throw in, or anything of that nature?
No, I'm happy wrapping up here. This has been great.
Absolutely.
Such a good podcast today.
Yes. Yes, it is. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Any comments you guys have, please leave them below. We'll answer. I would love to answer some questions.
yeah.
I have a blog all about nurturing your spirit, growing yourself spiritually, and to help you on your path towards awakening. And if you'd like to see what stage of spiritual awakening you're in, you guys can take the absolutely free spiritual awakening stage quiz on my website. I'll put a link in the description. Is what I'm trying to say. So check it out if you so please. That's all I have to say. So
I got nothing to say myself, but thank you for listening. If you've listened this far, drop a like, subscribe, comment.
till
Till
next
next time.
time. Adios.
Peace out.